Let's talk now about Eric Idle. He's an actor, very, very funny comedian, musician and writer, perhaps best known as a member of the Monty Python comedy group. He has also co-written 5 films, including The Life of Brian and The Holy Grail. And he's also adapted for the stage Monty Python's Spamalot, winning 3 Tonys, including Best Musical on Broadway. Is there anything this man cannot do? But wait, there's more. Eric is heading to Australia for the Just for Laughs Sydney Festival in December for one night only, and we are very pleased to say Eric Idle joins us now from Los Angeles. Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
Now listen, this is a happier occasion for all of you fans in Australia because not only are you coming to our shores to regale your fans with your life in comedy, you've also just survived a bout with pancreatic cancer. That must have come as such a shock to you.
It was a bit of a surprise. Actually, it's more of a surprise surviving it, to be honest, because you don't tend to do that. So I've been a very, very lucky fella. And so I've decided to come out to it and encourage people to contribute to a fund we're raising to, spend money on research, and maybe some other people can be as lucky as I was.
In a perverse way, you, in fact, were started writing a musical that saw you or your character potentially get pancreatic cancer some years ago.
Yeah, so it's about 10 years ago. I was writing a musical called Death the Musical, because Broadway can't wait for that kind of a title, can they? So, but it was interesting because I had to ask my doctor for a diagnosis. I wanted to get rid of a character, the person writing the play. I wanted him to find out he was dying, because that's irony. And he said, well, pancreatic cancer, every time. You may only have 3 weeks. And I said, oh, that's perfect. Thanks very much. And then 10 years later, I'm looking at this screen and it's the same doctor. And he said, look, and I said, what's that? He said, it's pancreatic cancer. So I laughed because it's, sort of about pigeons coming home to roost. It just made me laugh that here's the person writing a play about somebody writing a play who gets pancreatic cancer, who now has pancreatic cancer. Yeah. So, but he said there's good news because it was caught very early. So that was very good. So within about 10 days, they had me in an operating theatre, and this very clever surgeon, cut it out robotically, and now I'm clear apparently. So this is kind of good news, which I think we can share.
Oh,
really.
Absolutely, and it's great that you're using your experience to help others, Eric. That is fantastic. You announced your survival of this in, of all places, the set of US Masked Singer, where you performed, I think, quite magically as a hedgehog, and you performed the song "Love Me Do" from the Beatles. A great fan of that, and I assume Paul McCartney was quite happy with you using the song.
Well, I reached out to Paul McCartney because he has the copyright of that song because he wrote it when he was 16. So I asked him if he would let me do it on The Masked Singer, and he said yes, providing I tell him when it aired so he could be sure to miss it. So, but I then wrote to him, telling him when it was on, and I said it may not have been sung. This may not be the best version you've ever heard sung, but it's the only version you'll ever hear sung by a hedgehog.
And I thought you sang it pretty well, Eric, to be honest.
Thank you very much.
Hey, speaking of the Beatles, and I'm sure this will come up in your show in Sydney, you were great mates with George Harrison. And I guess you were both very similar, weren't you? Both, I guess, fighting for creative space. You with, the Palins and the Cleeses of this world, George with John and Paul. Is that a fair way of summarising it?
I think that's right, and I think we both learned from being in these groups, and we were a little bit underrepresented, and I think we both benefited from being in the groups and learned. I mean, George wrote some amazing songs which were never on Beatle albums, so that when he came to put out his solo album, he had all this wonderful material. And I was once moaning to him, I think on The Life of Brian, I said, he said, how's it going? So what, if you can get on screen, with Cleese and Palin, he said, well, imagine how it was getting studio space with Lennon and McCartney. So I said, that's it, say no more, got it.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Hey, let's talk about Monty Python. What are your happiest memories, Eric, of being involved in that fantastically successful comedy troupe?
I think some of the live shows, because you got the best of our material. I mean, like the Hollywood Bowl or something like that, or we did it at Drury Lane, we did it in New York, and they were always the most fun because our best material, and the crowds came and they loved it, and I think they were very good. experiences. Often we didn't have enough money, so it was rainy and miserable when we were filming. But Tunisia, when we were filming The Life of Brian, that was quite pleasant because we had enough money because George gave it to us.
Yes.
I mean, he paid for that film in its entirety, which is fairly extraordinary.
Yes, and speaks of the fantastic human being that George Harrison was. Have you got a favourite skit from Monty Python over the years?
I'm not sure I do. I mean, we aren't fans of the show. We wrote it. You know what I mean? So you don't go, how great was my set? And by the way, can I just say that I've got a very nice man coming to join me on stage at the State Theatre. It's Sean McAuliffe, who's going to chat with me. And, and I'll bring a guitar in case he gets dull, so we can sing some rude songs, No, he's a very nice guy. He's a very funny guy, too.
Sean McAuliffe is far from dull. He's a very funny man.
I know he is. I do know that. I was being super serious.
Hey, speaking of Monty Python, do you still keep in touch with the surviving members?
Not so much, I mean, they live in England and I live in California. So, I mean, I had a nice letter from Mike the other day when he discovered I'd survived. And, Mike, that's the sort of person he is. He'll always write something sweet. And, but I haven't seen John for ages. Maybe, I mean, the last time I think I was on stage in Sydney, I was touring with him. So that's quite some time ago. So I haven't actually seen him because of the lockdown. Nobody went anywhere really for about 2 years.
What do you think of John Cleese? He's just popped up with this show on the right-wing GB News. He's always complaining about being cancelled and comedy becoming too risk-averse and too safe. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm promoting cancer culture, not cancel culture. But I think the thing is, I've known him for 60 years next year. So which John Cleese do you want to talk about? I mean, he has in his life given me more great laughs than almost anybody else. When he first read out some of those extraordinary sketches he wrote with Graham Chapman. So we've had a lot of laughs along the line. And I think, when people get older, they sort of turn into different people. They get old and cranky. So you can, sometimes it's, I think it's better to remember when we were all together and we did the things that made people laugh. I think that's what I try and prefer to remember anyway.
Eric Idle, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you. Cannot wait to see you in Sydney towards the end of the year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you.